everybody to the Inspire channel here on YouTube. Thanks for joining us today. And we have someone most of you might know, not because he's not only because he's a 9-time Abraham Hicks hot seater, but because he's been with us before twice, and we're so excited to have him back. Nick Breau, how are you today?
Awesome. Thanks for having me once again. I always love having conversations about law of attraction.
Same here. And for those of you who haven't seen the previous 2 videos, please go and check them out. Nick Breau is a breakthrough specialist, and his work focuses on the law of attraction and the practical application of it, really. Nick goes into the practical stuff, the tangible stuff, how to do it, and not only has he knowledge about how to do it, but personal experience. And today we're going to talk about something that all of you want to hear about, and we love to talk about it too. Let's be honest, everyone loves to talk about it. How to manifest money, okay? Abundance, prosperity, the big bucks, the big things. And Nick is going to tell us some really cool success stories today, introduce us to really cool techniques that he uses with his clients and for himself. And he's also give us his 5 top money tips on how to manifest big bucks. Is that correct, Nick?
Sounds like fun. Let's do it.
Well, you and I, we've been talking about the law of attraction in many different areas. But again, money is such a big thing for so many people. And what was your breakthrough story? Because you're a breakthrough specialist. And so in order to be a breakthrough specialist, I feel you have to have your own breakthrough experience. So what was your breakthrough experience with money?
Yeah, so my big money manifestation happened probably about 2011, 2012. How long ago was that now? 7-ish years ago. And when I grew up, I was that kid on the street that all the adults were knocking on my door asking for tech support and help with their computers and problem solving. So growing up, I was big into computers, big into tech. My goal when I graduated from high school was I wanted to be one of those retired young kids who had a startup company that made a whole bunch of money. So I did a computer science degree, dove into the tech world, spent about 10 years in the tech world. I think I probably took part in, I would say maybe 4 or 5 different startups. And lucky for me, the last tech startup was quite successful. Within 5 years, it went from, an idea to a $330 million USD acquisition. I wasn't the idea guy for that company. I was the architect. So 2 guys came up with the idea. They brought me in to start writing code and putting the software together and figuring some stuff out. And what's interesting about that story is the acquisition happened exactly 5 years plus 1 day to the date that the company was founded.
Was that something that you planned for? And were you aware of the law of attraction at that time? Were you aware of how to manifest? Was that something that was already in your life, or did you stumble upon it later?
It was more in the last 6 to 8 months that I really started applying the concept. So I've been studying this stuff for a while and kind of dabbling in it, but I never really took it seriously until about 6 to 8 months prior to the acquisition happening. And there's really kind of 2 key things that happened in that last year, or the last 6 or 8 months, that really stood out to me, which I believe made the difference and allowed that acquisition to happen. One was, one day I was sitting at my desk, and one of my coworkers came in, and we knew who one of the potential acquirers were. We had a few names of a few businesses that could acquire us. And he walks over and he says, "Nick, you'll never guess what I just found on the conference room table." I'm like, okay, what's this guy talking about? And he hands me a business card. And the business card had a guy's name on it. It had the logo for one of those potential companies. And under the guy's name, the title was Mergers and Acquisitions Team. So these types of acquisitions, they often happen under the radar with the CEO and the executives, and the staff is typically kept out of the loop for confidentiality reasons. So when I saw that card, that shifted me from a state of, oh yeah, there's a good chance of an acquisition, to, oh yeah, it's happening, it's gonna happen, right? So my level of what I call the convincibility factor went from maybe like a 60% to a 95%. So that happened, within maybe 6 months of the acquisition. The other thing that happened prior to the acquisition was something a little bit more subtle. I remember being at home and noticing that, I had a really good stable job. I was making six figures. I was well off, and I would have a stable job for the rest of my life. So there was this kind of settling into like, you know what? I don't need the millions of dollars. I'm doing okay with life and I'm happy. And if the acquisition doesn't happen, even though I've been chasing after it for 10 years, it's still okay. So that was the other big piece of awareness I remember shifting into within the 6 to 8 months prior to that acquisition.
So two things that you just mentioned. Number one, the convincibility factor, and
Yeah.
number two, you just said you were in a state. Would you say it's contentment? Were you content with the situation, or was
I'd say satisfaction is more of a word. Basically, I shifted from a place of like, it needs to happen. I really want this to happen. It's got to happen, to more from a need to just more of a desire state.
because what is interesting about the so if you don't mind, I'm going to throw in my a little bit of my story too,
Yeah,
because
for sure.
it is important and it just came up. You said convincibility, and I remember years ago when my music career started and things started to roll, and I got a record deal, and I made a record and released it, and things started rolling. And then that was back in Austria, Europe, where we're originally from. And it was my intention, our intention, to move to Nashville and to get into country music here. And that was really the bigger goal, the bigger goal behind things. And then our mindset, when I say our, my wife's and I, was, okay, what if we found an investor who would be willing to invest in my music career? And that way that was I guess our convincibility factor, because we felt that was possible. We felt finding an investor for a vision was a feasible idea, right? And people might have said it isn't, but for us we were convinced it could be done. And again, through synchronicities, we met the right person. And here's what happened. He did not invest. He actually decided to be a patron and just give me the money, or us the money, which actually is a step above investing, because you don't have to worry about the return, which made us a little uncomfortable at first, because we really wanted the investment. It felt like, okay, here's giving and receiving, right? So that was, but what I'm getting at, we were convinced that this could happen. An investor sounded more possible than just finding someone to give us money, right, for this big step and to create the vision. But it happened. Someone came who said, no, I'm not going to invest. Here it is. And, and this is how it happened. And so I really, this came up when you talked about your story too. And the second thing is, and that I think is a key factor. How do you get comfortable, so comfortable and in such a state of satisfaction that the need goes away? How do you do that? What are the tools that you're using to remove this needy feeling?
Yeah. So the first step is understanding that anytime you want anything, so any desire that you want, what you truly want is how you believe that desire is going to make you feel. And Abraham talks about that. So whenever I work with clients who are stuck in that feeling of need, that's stuck in that feeling of desperation, it's about looking at, okay, so what's the emotion that they're reaching for? If they're looking to manifest a relationship, is it reaching for the emotion of feeling worthy or feeling connected? If it's money, is it for the emotion of freedom? And once you identify that emotion that they're reaching for, it's about finding a way to get them feeling that emotion, regardless of the presence of that desire or not. So once you feel that feeling of freedom, then the desperation for the desire subsides. And that's what allows you to shift out of that state of desperation.
And what allows for it to come, because whatever your dominant feeling and vibration is, has to link with the physical manifestation of it on the outside. I mean, if your dominant feeling is satisfaction, then you're going to experience things on the outside that mirror that feeling. So that's what happened for you. And now I would really love to hear what it felt like the moment when you realized the acquisition is a done deal, and when you realize there's going to be a big fat check coming your way or already in your hands. Tell us, because it was a big fat check, right? It was a really big fat check.
Yeah. I would say for me, if I go back to that moment, and it's funny, I haven't really gone back to recall that moment until recently in the collective. We did an anchoring exercise to anchor the feeling of success. But like the feeling wasn't, oh, I've got a bunch of money or anything like that. It was more a feeling of like, I did it, right? I set out to achieve something and it took 10 years, but like the longer it takes, the more satisfying something is when it shows up, right?
And do you feel that it is it the knowing that it is showing up, or is it the actual showing up? What does it make a difference in that at that point for you to have access to the money? Because I remember the first time I received a really big payment, the thrill was really before I went to the bank and saw it with my own eyes and withdrew a bunch of money. It wasn't really the biggest thing. It was knowing that it had happened.
Yeah, it's the unfolding is the magic, right? And I've got a really good car story that I experienced recently that we'll share in a little bit, which relates to money manifestation. But really, like when you look at the unfolding, when you have a magical unfolding, when you have magical synchronicities, when things show up in incredible ways, like finding somebody who's actually just going to give you the money to do what you want to do, like there's magic in the unfolding. And for some reason, when something unfolds in a magical way, there's this deeper sense of satisfaction and appreciation, at least for me.
It also, the thing is, we talked about this before. There are two ways. There is the actual manifestation where you work with vibration and you link up with what your desire mirrors in the outside world. So you link up with things. You don't make them happen. You do not effort your way into it. And I think that when it happens in a magical way, it is also a confirmation that it is a meant to be thing. It's on purpose rather than your ego really wants it to happen. And I think especially when it comes to money, that to me, I feel like there's a big split. Okay, is this an ego thing? Do I feel validated? Do I find my security in that? Or is it about the true heart's desire?
When I look at money, there always seems to be an unfolding that relates to that money. So for example, for me, the money showed up. That allowed me to purchase my grandparents' cottage, which was about to go up for sale, which I ended up purchasing, which is where I live now, where I ended up building my house, in a city 2 hours away. Being here is what allowed me to meet Nick, my current partner. So like when I look back at when big money comes in, when big chunks of money come in, there always seems to be a sense of purpose or reason for that money having to have had shown up, even if you're not aware of what that purpose is in that moment that it does show up.
Which brings me to another question. So when the money shows up and then you know why it showed up and what it is for.
Yeah.
It is also important to follow up on that intuition and spend it or invest it in for that particular reason. I feel if you don't do that and fearfully hang on to it, you're breaking the cycle. You're going into the lack cycle again.
Yeah, if you're fearfully holding on to the money, you're putting on a vibration of I don't have enough money. And then that's going to, vibrate at that resonance of not having enough money.
You mentioned to me that I think one of your clients had a amazing money manifesting success story just recently, something with a game show. What was that all about?
Yeah, last week, he told me about it a few months ago that he was on a game show, but he couldn't tell me any details about it until it actually aired. And it aired on, I believe it was last Sunday evening. It was the $100,000 pyramid. and he won 50,000 on the show. And it's really quite a good story. And I talk about it in my book, so I don't want to go too much into details about the story. But something that was really interesting about his story is he went through all these rounds of auditions, and finally they said, yeah, they called him up, you're going to be on the show tomorrow, we're going to pick you up in a limo, we're going to take you to the studio. And he got to the studio, and there was like 8 contestants there. And when he got there, they said something like, well, you know what, only 6 of you guys are going to get on the show out of the 8. And unfortunately, he wasn't one of those 6. And he went home disappointed, angry, really upset. He went through all this process. And that night, he got a call from the producer saying, yeah, we need to do another taping tomorrow. Do you want to come back? He said, we can't guarantee you'll be on, but we would like you to come back. And he's like, sure, yeah. And he went back. And just before heading out the door to go back for the second day, his girlfriend, who was reading Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now, she gave him a piece of advice. And she said,
I love it.
It's a classic. She told him, just go have fun. You've got a stable job. You're doing good in life. Who cares if you don't win? Just go have fun. And he was like, you know what? You're right. I'm just going to go. I'm going to hang out with the comedians. I'm going to have fun. And whatever happens, happens. And that was the energy he came into on the second day. And his experience that second day was completely different. He was in alignment. Everything was working out. And you went right up to the $50,000 prize. So
that's amazing.
Yeah. So the energy he went at it made all of that difference. And he went in from alignment versus going in the first day under all that stress and pressure to needing to perform.
Now, was it his intention to manifest money from in an unexpected way, or was he like, because you in your success story, you were consciously working on that acquisition?
Yeah. For him,
so you knew where that big chunk was coming from once this was through, but what was it for him?
He had set the intent. So he's a school teacher, and his intent is to work in the entertainment industry. And he's gotten really close to some big things in the entertainment industry. He had a small part on the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. He was on stage doing a little bit of stuff. So he's dabbled in the entertainment industry. And I don't know how long ago it was, maybe 6 months, maybe a year ago, he set the intent to manifest a certain amount of money, like 140,000 or 120,000 within, a 12-month period. And between a raise he got at work, a 5-figure raise, plus the money he won on the game show, it told exactly the amount of money he had intended to manifest within that time period. And the other thing that's also really neat is that he had set his intent separately before all this game show stuff came up to be part of a primetime TV show that would have over 1 million views. And that episode of his show, I think, was one of the top rated episodes of that show of all time. And it had 4.5 million watchers for that episode.
That's unbelievable. Now, when he was picturing it, did he think that he was going to be a guest on a game show, or was that all different vision? Because I'm
doubtful.
Pardon me?
His big dream is to host like a late night talk show. I think he does some maybe stand-up comedy or improv or that type of thing. So I don't think he ever thought of being on a game show. The way it unfolded, I think he was hanging out with a bunch of friends and somebody came in and said, hey, they're auditioning for a game show down the street. And he was actually the last person in line who got into it to audition for the show.
It is so interesting to me because when I hear that story, it's like, once you know your general vision and where you want to go, how specific can you get? How specific can you get in your vision of what it is that you want? Because the universe delivers in such unbelievable ways sometimes, and you go, oh wait, if I had just added this particular part to the vision, it might have turned out differently,
And that's the key. So here's my number one thing that I tell people when it comes to manifesting money. For most people, trying to manifest money is actually blocking the desires that they want. Because what they're doing is they're focused on the money, and by being focused on the money they think they need to make show up, they're not building momentum to the actual desire that they want. There's a really good Abraham Hicks clip who says, the lady gets in the hot seat. She says, I want to manifest $100,000. And Abe says, okay, well, what would you use the $100,000 for? She says, I want to spend 6 months traveling the world. Okay. And the conscious rational mind says, okay, I want to travel the world. I need to figure out $100,000. And what happens is, because all your focus is on how do I make the money show up, you're not building the momentum towards the travel, right? The money's just a how. The money's not none of your business. The money's going to show up the way the money's going to show up, like you learn looking for an investor, right? So because people are so focused on manifesting money, they're not building that momentum for the desires. So the money's not going to show up because the momentum for the desires aren't going to show up. If you're vibrationally aligned with a desire, and the money is a necessary component to having that desire, the money itself has to show up, right? If your inner being says, okay, the next step on your path is to go to Hawaii to do a specific training, okay? If that's the very next step on your path of least resistance, your inner being's not gonna go, oh shit, Gene's got no money in his bank account. I guess he's out of luck. Can't go down his path of least resistance anymore. Game's over for him, right? It's not like that, right? If you're vibrationally aligned with, or a vibrational match with a desire, it has to show up. So the money's kind of irrelevant from that retrospect.
And also, I think here's a rationale too. Money is just our current tool.
Yeah.
Human history, it hasn't been around. I mean, it has been around for a while, but not forever. There were times where money was not even a concept, but abundance was still a concept. In nature, in living, in abundance was always a concept. It's natural. It's a natural concept. So I feel like sometimes it can help with this anxiety around the topic money. It is just our current tool, and it is a tool. It is not the end. It's a means to an end. And I think if we put our trust into money as a tool of security, then we're on a lack fear train, and it is not our source of security. And I feel, and it's exactly what you're saying too, is when you have a clear desire, then, and you are vibrating at the rate, at the frequency of that desire, then the path has to appear to it. And it has to be, and it is usually easy. When it's not easy, you can always take a breather and see, and realign and see, okay, something that I think is super important, what you said, is what is the next step? Not what's the 17th step. What is the very next step that my inner being leads me to?
Yeah.
So the number one tip from Nick is to not focus on the money first, but really align with your desire, align with source, and put your beautiful, wonderful, aligned focus on your desire, and allow for the means to show up.
You don't have to manifest the money. If you're focused on the desire from a place of non-resistance, the desire has to show up.
I love that. And it also means it takes the pressure off. Money can be earned. There's a million ways how money can come to you, but earning money or making money, that's only one spectrum of it, and it's only one part of the spectrum of it. How do you approach the topic when someone comes to you and says, okay, Nick, here, I'm on a fixed income. I make X amount of dollars each year, but my desires far exceed that amount. Now, I have no humanly idea where that money could come from. What would you say?
Focus on the end desire. Focus on the end result. Right?
But there's a belief here. There's a belief system that we were all brought up with, especially in our culture. Hard work. You have to work hard. You have to earn it. And nothing comes without that. So how do we not just overcome, but actually dissolve those beliefs because they're so hindering?
Yeah, and that brings up one of my favorite topics, or my favorite acronyms, VROI, which I call vibrational return on investment. Right?
I love that.
So it's about understanding that we do live in a vibrational reality, right? Whether you believe that it's a vibrational reality or not, we live in a vibrational reality. I saw an Abraham Hicks, I don't remember if it was a meme or a clip recently, and she said, action means diddly squat.
I love that. I remember that. That was one of my favorite lines in the clip recently. Yeah.
Right? Daydream more, right? Feel good more, be lazy more. Lazy is vibrationally productive. That's another one of my favorite terms, vibrationally productive, right? Efforting and action is not vibrationally productive. So I want to share my second money tip, and it relates to this. What I see people doing, especially people who struggle with getting their bills paid and that type of thing, is you want to work your way into wealth and not out of debt. Because what I see is that most people, they're trying to work their way out of debt. They're trying to work their way out of not having enough money. Anytime you try working your way out of something, you're adding momentum to the problem, right? There's a big vibrational difference between working out of debt and working into wealth. So my number 2 money tip is ask yourself, am I trying to work my way out of something or into something?
Oh, that's a perfect shift. It seems like it's so close to each other, but one has resistance, one has flow.
Yeah. If you understand law of attraction, you understand that you get what you focus on. So if I'm trying to work out of debt, what am I focusing on? Debt. If I'm trying to work into wealth, what am I focusing on? Wealth, right? Very simple, yet very minute differences that make the difference between, struggling with finances and doing very well off with finances.
What's your favorite exercise when it comes to this particular tip 2? What do you give your clients as maybe homework?
That's a good question. I would say a solid morning practice, right? And money is the hardest topic around this because money is in our face every day, right? We get bills in the mail, we have to go buy food. So I understand for people why they struggle with not focusing on the lack. One of my favorite exercises that Abraham Hicks talks about is drop $100 in your wallet, drop $200, go to the store and just say, I could have that, I could have that, I could have that. You don't need to buy anything, but just practice being in that energy of I can have this, I can have that. Something I've been doing to practice a $40 million manifestation is embodying what would it feel like to be a 40 millionaire? What would it feel like to gas my car up as a 40 millionaire? What does it feel like to make coffee as a 40 millionaire? What does it feel like to take a piss as a 40 millionaire, right? Do everything from the energy of embodying where you want to be.
I love that because you were mentioning everyday stuff that everyone can do. You're gonna make coffee probably or tea. You're gonna go to the bathroom. You're gonna do those things. So how does it and what a beautiful question. What does it feel like? And so many times we don't allow ourselves to ask that question because we're so caught up in the day-to-day.
And go ahead, sorry, and then I'll finish.
No, I was just going to add one thing in particular that Christine and I have been doing is really what Abraham calls segment intending, which is don't plan your month as much and your week and even your day. You're going to know some of the things that are going to happen during your day. It's somewhat scheduled, but here's the thing. You're going to have segments in your day. Really set the intention for the next hour. What are you going to do? How is it going to make you feel? What do you want it to feel like? Which is even more important. And spread that feeling ahead of time. It's like sending unconditional love ahead of it. And just a quick, because I told in our last video, we're in between houses, we're moving, and we needed to find space to store our stuff. And we walked into, Christine had a hunch where to go and what to do, and we walked into the storage place, really nice girl that took care of us, and we got the first month free for the storage. And I look on, and I was a little stressed out because everything had to happen so fast. And so I look on the left side, and there's a sign, and it said, "Relax, we've got it." And I thought, perfect. It was just perfect timing. And all I did was before we went into that storage place is we sent love ahead, unconditional love. Bless the people that we were going to deal with, and it was so effortlessly easy and free.
Awesome. Cool. So I like earlier what you said about feeling the vibration of wealth, right? And that brings up another one of my 5 money tips, which is the feeling of wealth doesn't have to just come from money, right? I posted something on my Facebook the other day where when we were on the last Abraham Hicks cruise, we were browsing one of the watch stores. We were trying on $40,000 watches. And I was like, wow, well, this is what it would feel like to have $40,000 on my wrist. And I was like, yeah, maybe I'll buy one someday, but this isn't really for me. Get home, and then time goes by, and my birthday was last week. And Nick brought my daughter to the store, and she said, pick out, what do you want to get your dad for your birthday? And she bought me a watch. And it was her idea, and it was the perfect watch, and perfect. The time's a bit off, and you have to reset it every morning. But like, to me, that watch being a gift for my daughter that she chose herself is way more valuable than a $40,000 Rolex or anything else. So having that watch on my wrist, even though it might be $100 watch, really makes me feel wealthy, right? So there's different types of wealth. There's not just financial wealth, but practicing the other forms of wealth is going to seep the feeling of wealth over into your finances. It's going to carry over. If you've got 5 things going on, 1 going wrong and other 4 going well, as humans, we have a tendency to focus on our problems, and we put all our focus on this one. What happens when you put all your focus on this one? The negative momentum you're going to have on this one is probably going to carry over onto these. Flip side is also the place. So if you put all your focus on the things going well, the vibration and the momentum is going to carry over to the other one, and it's going to bring it in the right direction too. And that applies to wealth. So I think that's the third tip, or the third tip is practice the vibration of wealth and the love that you have with your family, the wealth of friendships, the wealth of free time you might have, right? And that'll carry over into your finances.
Well, I can so relate to this, Nick. As a dad, I mean, that is unconditional wealth that you have received, and unconditional love. So I can totally relate to that, having had those gifts and cherishing them. And practicing the vibration of wealth brings me to one important question and the teachers in the past that, whether it was Neville Goddard or Wayne Dyer or whether it's Abraham, they all bring us back to one so important thing, which is our imagination. How to practice wealth is, yes, you can go out and test drive that car and do that and go into the store and try on the stuff. And that all is, to me, it's a practice in wealth thing. But your imagination, there are no limitations to what you can imagine. And what is your favorite, do you go into meditation? What is your favorite practice for imagining and feeling your way into the situation desired?
Yeah, so I feel like one step beyond imagination is what I call embodiment. And I've actually got a free meditation in my e-course, nickbreau.com/e-course, which is called the Desire Embodiment Meditation. And it takes you through a process where you're actively feeling out that desire with all 5 of your senses. The important thing to do when you do these types of imagining or embodiment exercises is to make sure you're feeling everything in present tense, as if you already have it, as if you're already experiencing it. I've got a series of embodiment processes I give my clients. I came up with I call it a protocol. I call it the Into Existence Protocol. I shared that with my collective group, where for 5 days, they embody their desire in 5 different ways. So day 1, you write about your desire. You embody it through writing. Day 2, you embody it through speaking. So you open up your voice recorder and you speak the desire into existence. On day 3, you use that embodiment meditation I was talking about. I forget what day 4, day 5 off the top of my head, but it's a process where you're embodying the desires in all these different ways.
I love the word embodiment. It's a into existence process. Very, very beautiful. And just to quickly jump into that, because you mentioned the collective, it's one of Nick's courses, and I think it's one that he feels particularly excited about because it's a new thing where, Nick, you bring on now almost 80 people?
Yeah, we're just under 80 now. My goal is to when I look at the world of law of attraction, all these people listening to Abraham Hicks and reading all these books, there's still a gap between understanding the concepts and applying the concepts in the way they get results. So what I did is, I've got that free e-course, nickbreau.com/e-course, which teaches a lot of the core concepts. I go through the 4 days of manifestation. And then for those people who know the material, have been studying it for a while, who still have struggled bridging the gap to really getting the results, I created what I call the collective. And the collective is a bunch of online coaching, some recordings. It's really building what I'm calling the world's most aligned community. And it's to help people really not only apply the concepts, but engage and interact with a community of people who are focused on living life as that leading edge creator.
Which is such an, it's like with anything else, like if you want to do something new and learn something new, you're going to immerse yourself, not just in the new habit, but you're going to attract people that are on the same wavelength and frequency. And it's such a satisfying interaction. So we're going to put the link into the description to the collective with Nick Breau, and you can sign up for it and experience it yourself. And become part of this world's most aligned community. I love that.
Totally. It's so much fun. The participants are loving the calls. I just can't wait to see what this is going to evolve into.
Well, also, you know, I'm part of your Facebook group that you invited me to, and there is very aligned interaction going on there where people can also ask questions. And I can tell that it's a community that, you know, has a lot to give, and it's a giving and receiving mode. And you know, Nick jumps in and will answer a lot of questions, but you will also hear from other people that might be exactly where you are on your journey, or maybe just a step ahead, which is, it's like playing tennis. I don't know, it's like you want to play with someone that's just a little bit ahead of you, not too far, because that's where you go, oh, I get it. This is my next step. This feels, you know, they've done it. It's totally.
Yeah.
So that's also, I just wanted to let people know that's also part of being part of the collective is the Facebook group that you have.
Yeah, and community is the key word, because a lot of people who are living this leading edge experience, who follow Abraham Hicks, they feel like they're the kind of the black sheep of the family, or they feel like there's not a lot of people who understand this stuff or who get it or want to learn it, and they kind of feel alone a little bit. And that was another one of the inspirations for creating this collective, is to really help, you know, like-minded people connect and help each other out.
So that is in the description. Check it out, please sign up. And I think we are landing at number 4 at Nick's Money Tips. And that's if you, for whatever reason, just got coffee and we're distracted for a little while, that's what we're talking about today, is how to manifest money. And Nick has told us about his personal success story, has told us about success stories from his clients. And before we get to tip number 4, Nick, I know you're driving a brand new vehicle that you are loving. And I know that you just didn't go to the dealer and bought it. I know there's a wonderful manifestation story behind it. What was it?
Yeah, and the key to this story is really the money aspect of the story. And it's a bit of a long story, so I'm going to try to condense it a little bit. But essentially, my old vehicle was breaking down. Decided I wanted a new one. The one I found, I fell completely in love with. It was a newly redesigned hybrid. But unfortunately, I was told that there were production issues with the batteries, that there was approximately a 6-month wait list. Now I've been told it's up to a year wait list. So I kind of gave up on it. And 2 or 3 months later, I woke up and I just had the inspiration to hop online and check websites of all the local dealerships within a 4-hour drive. And one of the specific dealerships, they had a vehicle listed and it described my vehicle, but the price wasn't right. So I assumed, okay, well, the website is wrong. Either it's this vehicle or the that I'm looking for, or it's a different one. So I call up the dealership. They're like, yeah, they confirm it was absolutely the exact vehicle, exact trim, exact color, all the details. It was the exact one. That was like on a.
It wasn't going to be available for at least 6 months.
Wasn't supposed to be available for at least 6 months. I found out later that it was somebody who had ordered it, and when it came in with a shipment of a whole bunch of other vehicles, and she decided she liked a different one instead. That's why it was available. But the interesting story is, I went up to check it out. I was 2 hours away a few days later, and the day before I went to check the vehicle out, I decided I had the inspiration to launch one of my 5-week group coaching money programs, which I announced, I launched. The next day I went to the dealership. They told me I needed $18,000 down payment to get the payments where I wanted to them. I told them, okay, I'll let you know by Monday morning. Monday morning rolls around. Guess how much money came through the money program that I announced? $18,000 in signups, right? Exactly the amount of money that I needed for that down payment. If I would have had that inspiration a month earlier, I probably would have allocated that money for something else, right? If that money would have come in even a week later, then it probably would have been too late. The car would have been sold to somebody else.
Which refers back to money tip number 1. Focus on the desire and the money will show up.
Absolutely. So that was a perfect example how I became vibrationally aligned with that vehicle. It showed up very, very fast. And the money that I needed showed up too. I didn't do anything to make the money show up. I just had the inspiration to launch a program. That's it. I was like, okay, cool. Maybe I'll get 5 signups. Maybe I'll get 50 signups. I don't know, but it feels good launching that program right now. And I did it, right? So to me, that car, I love the car. I love driving the car. It's fun. But what makes that car 100 times more satisfying is that unfolding that led me to having the car the way that I got.
Oh my God, I can so relate to that. And it's this following your intuitive leads and doing the inspired action, taking inspired action. That was just, whether it was looking up or going through the dealership websites, or whether it was launching that program, you just followed your intuitive leads, which is such a powerful thing to do. And I think we can all go back and go, oh man, why didn't I forget about that? You're going to get new intuitive leads every second, every minute, every day. And it's just a matter of, okay, I decide to listen. I decide to do it now.
And an important part about that story is, maybe for a month or 3 weeks, I don't remember how long it was before actually getting the inspiration and finding that the car was available, I would spend 20 minutes every day just browsing Instagram, looking at, ooh, that car, I could put those rims on it, or, oh, I could get this color. So I was just indulging in how satisfying that desire is without even having it, just knowing how satisfying it would be.
And you put up no resistance. You were just enjoying making all those plans and figure, and playing with it. Honestly,
I wasn't doing it to make anything happen. I was doing it for the sheer enjoyment of doing it. And I tell people that about the embodiment or the daydreaming. Don't daydream or don't embody from a homework perspective of, I'm doing this because I'm trying to make something happen. You need to do it from the sheer enjoyment of the process itself.
I couldn't agree more. Which brings us, Nick, you said you had 5 money tips. What is number 4?
That was number 4. So number 4 was practice the vibration of wealth.
I'm sorry, my bad. What is number 5? What is?
I don't know. I'm losing track now. Oh no, we do have 2 more. So number 4 is watch out for the current reality loop. So the current reality loop is when you continue to observe a circumstance, you focus on a circumstance, resulting in you getting more of that circumstance. So let's say that every month I owe $10,000 in debt. If I keep observing $10,000 in debt, $10,000 in debt, if I keep observing my current reality circumstance, I'm just going to loop back into more of that because that's what I'm focusing on. And Abraham Hicks, on the whole last Caribbean cruise, she kept talking about, you got to get out ahead of it. You got to get out ahead of it. You got to get out ahead of it. And that's where the daydreaming is so important, is focusing on where you want to be more than focusing on where you currently stand.
Does that also mean that in reality, in your vibrational reality, you are not in debt. In your vibrational reality, you are whole. You have everything, and everything is in perfect alignment. So that way your vibration is already detached from and could we say sometimes it is really good to ignore the facts, not to try to you know, not to try to lie to yourself, but ignore the facts and don't observe so much. Don't look outside so much. What's happening in here is way more important, and that's going to create what's coming for you.
One perspective that I like to choose is the perspective of, is this me? Is this the embodiment? Is this what I want? So like, how do I even explain this? I mean, perspectives are everything, right? The perspective that you choose is where you're pointing your sails. So every time you choose the perspective of this isn't what I want, you're going back to more of this isn't what I want. And like, every reality exists. There's a reality of Gene that has the money, that doesn't have the money, that has the car, that doesn't have the car, and your vibrational frequency is defining which reality you're tuning into. So the reality of you that has that money, it already exists, right? Just like you already said, it's in the vortex, right? It's just a matter of you tuning into it.
And to speaking, you said reality loop and getting out of that current reality loop. One thing that we all have done or do is we speak about our reality to people as if it is something that is, you know, chiseled in stone. And I would say, quit talking about it. If that is something that you're already moved out of because you have a new desire, quit talking about it. Quit talking about your current reality. And Abraham says so many times, well, you don't have to go into the details of your desire with anybody else, but you can say, I feel so good and so aligned on the path that I'm on, which there is no one that can dispute that because this is how you feel. And that's just a practical addition to this reality loop or getting out of that, which I think is such an important thing to, you know,
Yeah.
to shift over.
Yeah. Earlier this week, I posted a meme, and on that meme, I said, how does your unmanifested desire feel? If the unmanifested desire brings positive emotions and it feels good, then odds are that you're creating positive momentum towards it. If the unmanifested desire brings up resistance, fear, lack, negative emotion, that means you've probably got some resistance to work through.
And what do you think are the most important reasons when you have that resistance or lack? Is it because it is not a true heart's desire, or is it because the convincibility factor isn't there?
I think it's convincibility factor. I think it's you don't believe that it can happen. You can't figure out how it can happen, so you don't believe in it. Could be emotions like stuckness, so resistant, dominant, negative emotions like unworthiness. So there's different things that can come into play when it comes to those sources of resistance.
So what do you do? What do you do when you have that resistance come up? Do you go smaller? Do you go for something that feels more believable to you, or do you find a path to?
So there's kind of two approaches. One is go more general, right? So you want to get as specific as you can towards a desire until it doesn't feel good anymore, and then you want to take a step back and go more general. Second, I like asking the question, what must I believe is true to feel this way? So anytime a negative emotion surfaces, negative emotion is anchored by a perspective that's underlying beneath it. So if you can identify the perspective and then reframe out of the negative perspective, you'll often be able to release that negative emotion.
Wow, I like that.
Yeah, I go into a lot of detail with that in the new book because, in my opinion, that's the work that most people need. Abraham Hicks is always talking about the anchor or the cork that's floating at the surface, and what I see is everybody's efforting into alignment. And my approach is instead of efforting yourself back up to the surface every day, cut away the things that are preventing you from being up here all the time.
And when Nick talks about the book, it is I need to apologize because I didn't mention it when I introduced Nick today. He's a 2-time author about to become a 3-time author because he's writing his new book. His first 2 books, Single No More and The Power of Joy, are available on Amazon and all the good places that you can buy books. And his third book, which he says is the next level, you're in the process of writing, and it's going to be released this year, right?
Fingers crossed September, but probably October at the latest.
So be on the lookout for this. The one thing that Nick told me that he's focusing on in his book is telling a lot of stories, success stories, which I think is so valuable. I love that in a book. So that is something that we can all look forward to. And today, as we speak about money, Nick has 5 tips, and we have already talked about 4 of them. So Nick, what is your number 5 tip for manifesting the big bucks?
The last one is dealing with the biggest source of resistance typically when it comes to money, which is the emotion of stuckness. So remember that manifestation needs to be a vibrational match to the way you feel. The main dominant vibration of money would be freedom, because how would you feel if you had lots of money? Freedom. Why is it that you want a whole bunch of money? Because you feel stuck, right? So it's working your way out of the stuck feeling into that feeling of freedom. And one of the reframes I like to remind people of is where stuckness comes from. The energy, the vibration, the emotion of stuckness comes from when your conscious mind can't figure out a path from here to here, right? So when you can't figure out how to get the job, you can't figure out how to make the money show up, that's when you feel stuck. But the path from here to here is not about the path the conscious mind creates. It's about understanding that achieving this is about becoming a vibrational match to it. And once you understand that it's just about being a vibrational match to it, and you're the only one that has any control over your vibration, you then understand that you're never truly stuck. And stuck isn't even possible. You're never stuck. You're just continually re-experiencing the same thing over and over because you're not shifting your vibration and your focus. So that final tip is, if you feel like you're dominantly in the feeling of stuckness, start working yourself out of the vibration of feeling stuck into the vibration of freedom.
I love it. I love it. I had to let it sink in. I love the vibration of freedom, and money is one part of that. And that makes me happy to feel that way, and it makes me happy to the easiness of feeling that way. One thought that I had about this last money tip is that you said the mind can't figure out the house. It doesn't have to, and maybe that's something, we talk about it all the time, but the relief of allowing yourself to say, I don't have to know the house, because I don't know how my fingernails grow, and I don't really understand what makes my whole body work. I just trust that it does. And what makes the sun go up and how that works. We don't have to. So if we can trust that the air is going to be there that we breathe, and the sun's going to come up, and the fingernails are going to grow, well, we can trust that all the components are going to work together to bring our desire, to manifestation.
Totally.
So this was the 5. It was, it sounds so salesy. And Nick already said earlier, what was the 4th, or was it the 5th? It's really because we have a conversation that we jump into alignment about a topic, and then we have this conversation, and we use those numbers, 5 tips, because it helps us to, give a little bit of focus on this. But really, it's about an aligned conversation, and I'm so glad that we have jumped on this topic of money today, because I know it is always important to people, and I hope that mostly it has taken out the pressure, because that's what's money and pressure for so many people go hand in hand. And today this felt more like moving from pressure to abundant, free feeling. And go back and re-listen the 5 tips, and re-listen, to the whole re-listen the whole conversation, and the stories. The stories are so satisfying. And I know Nick has more of them, and you can join his free e-course. That's going to be in the description down here, and the collective. And Nick, is there a specific program money manifesting program that you have going on that people can sign up for?
Not right now, but I just remembered that in that free e-course, the most recent 5-week money program I did, the recording for the first call is in that. So anybody who wants to check that recording out, then it's in the bonus section of that e-course.
Wonderful. So you're going to have all links connected, Nick, all things Nick Breau in the description, including the courses. And thank you so much for joining us today. By the way, my name is John Nolan. I'm tuning in from Nashville, Tennessee, and Nick is tuning in from Canada, the very East Coast. He's in a time zone no one's ever heard about. I call it the ghost zone. Nick, where exactly are you tuning in from?
I'm on the east coast. Literally, I'm like 20 feet from the ocean right now. It's called Atlantic time. We're an hour ahead of Eastern.
That sounds fantastic. 20 feet from the ocean. Thank you, Nick, for taking the time. Thank you for your 5 tips, the stories that you shared, the inspiration that you've given us. And thank you, inspired friends, for tuning in today. We love you, and we look forward to the next talk. Y'all have a wonderful and blessed day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.